It's not that far off. We all travel with the same pattern. I think at 40 years old, most men go blind. You know, it's just a common factor that happens. But I would say, first of all, I would look at human development, and then I would start looking at basically, you know, the kinesiology, and beside that I would look at all the digestive tract areas, and just basically I would just tear the body down upside down, because once you really understand how the body works, it's digestive tract, and then once you start giving the basis of the body its certain stimulus, now it makes sense. And, you know, kinesiology and the movement of the body, those are really important. But those are going to be almost after the fact, in my opinion.
Okay.
You know, if you know kinesiology really well, but you don't understand the movement of the body, but you don't understand what's happening inside the cells, then it's almost like the cart before the horse.
I see.
Something
Okay,
like
very interesting. I had never seen it like that before, connected so much.
Absolutely.
And going into more of the dietary part, I know water is a big thing with the field that with either dietetic or physiology. Can you tell me more about how you would rank hydration in what you do?
Oh, goodness. It would probably have to be the first. If it's not one of the top 5 issues you'd want to talk about, it would be the first 2 issues you would talk about, because everything in the body moves through water. It's your carrying system. And then once the body starts to dehydrate or run out of water, not a lot of things are going to run real well. So I think the main question is to everyone, there just isn't a particular amount per person. And someone might say, oh, warm water only, and it's a gallon a day, or it's warm water only, you know, 2 glasses a day, and you eat your vegetables and you get fluid. I've always found that you need some good fresh water, and it all depends on the person, their work environment, how much workload do they put out, how much water do they lose in a day, and things like that. So it's going to be a little bit different for everybody how much water they would need, for sure.
All right. Also, I was reading that essentially there are 3 food categories: the fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. How do the ratios of these food types affect the body?
Oh boy. Again, your statement is really correct, but how they affect the human body will all be different depending on the body.
Okay.
And also, you want to see, for this moment, how are all these going to be affected? How are these going to affect if someone's goal would be to gain weight? So just by the way you could rearrange the fats, carbs, and proteins, you could have the same foods now become weight gain. Or you could turn them over and they could be weight loss if that was a goal. But there has to be a certain amount of protein to build and maintain the body, and there has to be a certain amount of fats to run your hormone systems, and there has to be a certain amount of carbs for all your long-burning acting fuels. So all of those categories are very important, and again, in someone's human growth journey, those numbers have to change all the time as they go. And the need is always the same. A woman on a menstrual cycle, carbohydrate intake should be 25 to 30% more than on a time when there's not. And add that to exercise, you're at another 20%. So you might be 5 carbs to 1 protein for a woman who exercises during a bad menstrual cycle. So in those really, and I'm giving you a pretty good guesstimation or an estimation of those.
So it changes with each individual.
It can change per week.
Male, female.
It sure does, absolutely.
Okay.
It sure does.
And are there certain foods to stay away from? Certain.
You know, I would think. I think at one time I put together the top 10 foods and the top 10 worst foods. And the worst foods aren't necessarily something that you wouldn't ever eat. It's something that you would really be careful for. And I think, again, depending on the individual person, you'd want to be careful for certain foods and where you're going with it. Where are you going in your health kick or your nutrition and what you're trying to accomplish. I think that basically more carbohydrates have gotten a bad name where it's almost unjustifiable because they're a great source of energy, a great source of fuel if the body can recognize them. And I think that's where a lot of times people eat too many carbs, they get in trouble because their body gets in a place where they can't digest the food. And that gets a little trouble. But, you know, and I would say just generally throwing a blanket over this is that just generally you'd want to be careful for more window food and more really highly processed food in general, just as a general statement. But it's fun to have once in a while, and it's a fun food, and to have something occasionally doesn't put you under when it comes to a food item.
I see, sure.
I'd be careful with
lots
those.
of sense.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the most rewarding part of your job?
I think that the most rewarding part of my job would be, on one aspect, watching young people grow and mature and being able to stay steady and disciplined on a path and to achieve their goals, whether it's to play college football or whether it's to be an Olympian. And then on the other side, I think it would be having people who have lived a certain life, and their certain lifestyle has had them have 4 or 5 or 6 different medications, and now they have made an aggressive change, and they were able to get themselves really healthy and remove all the medications. So those are pretty rewarding. So I get to sit back and write the prescriptions of exercise or food or different things, but it takes a lot of high discipline to get it done. But it's pretty rewarding when somebody gets on the other and say, why didn't I do this before?
I see that's so exciting to pull somebody away from their medicines and show them how food, and just through natural exercise and food, it can
absolutely,
it can cure some of their things that happen. What are some exciting innovations that you see happening in your field right now?
Well, I think on one area, I think the most powerful movement, of course, is with healthcare. It's becoming very powerful, and it's changing by the minute. And I think what's happening now would be, let's try not to be sick, instead of let's try to manage the condition that we've given ourselves. So instead of someone being a type 2 diabetic just because their liver can no longer handle the amounts of sugar they pounded in themselves, and before you know it, you're a borderline, and then you're a type 2 diabetic. Don't change your lifestyle, just change your medications, and just keep eating the same. That's not happening these days. What's happening now, people are getting pretty well informed, and a lot of people know you don't have to be a type 2 diabetic. And where healthcare is really changing dramatically, it's going to be, I would imagine, that people are going to be rewarded for not going to the doctor. And so there's a lot of this flying around, and so for me, that's a good thing. And I think for people, and I think when medications are built to partnership people for life, those should be few and far between. Medications should be used for a temporary time in someone's life so you can go back and fix the root of the problem. And most of those, someone can really, by a change in lifestyle, attitude, just changing some habits and routines.
That's a very good explanation. More people will probably see that going on in the healthcare industry.
Absolutely.
So, are there any opportunities in physiology that you think a student like me could explore?
I think in any time you have people that are looking in any area of self-improvement, that will always be a successful field. Self-improvement has always been very, very successful, be it education, whatever it's going to be. And so if someone can bring in their self-improvement, whether it's someone who can live longer, whether it's someone who can build a big, strong body, there's a lot of really neat niches that are out there, whether it's just people who have high blood pressure and you zero in and be that specific, or certain diabetics, or you can reach a larger group of people in a hospital setting. And I know a lot of people like to go into sports because it's fun, and it's really more of a positive. And I guess unless your team doesn't win, then it's not very positive, you know. And so really here, I'm really responsible for the development of the young men here. So if you look at someone in 8th grade, you take a snapshot of them at 8th grade, and in 9th grade, in 10th grade, in 11th and 12th grade, there has to be a process of growth and development, especially if it's in the realm of athletics. So the proof is kind of in the pudding. When you get to about 4 years under your belt, there has to be some evidences of what we're doing here.
Excellent.
Sure thing.
Well, Dr. Smith, I am thankful that you took your time.
Oh, it's been a
and,
pleasure.
Answering these questions for me, and would there be a chance that later on, if I get into this profession,